Welcome back to Bootcamp, and it is week 3 of 9. 9 weeks to make sure you are completely prepared for your Spanish speaking exam with one video per week, finishing with a live masterclass the week before your exams. Today's video is a run through of the role play task, which is worth 10 marks, 10 easy marks if you know what you're doing. And the best bit is this video is going to make sure you know exactly what you're doing. And stick around for the revision tips at the very end. So today's video, we're going to start by looking at question words. Then we're going to look at what we need to do in our prep time for the role play. We'll do a worked example. There'll be some independent examples. And then I'll go through with you how you should be revising for the role play. The good news is there's not a lot to do for the role play. And as always, everything you need for this part of the speaking in under 15 minutes. What more could you want? So starting off with question words. So question words are obviously very useful for you throughout the speaking exam. And we will, in future videos, look at them in different contexts, especially the unexpected questions. But the role play is the only part of the exam that actually forces you to ask questions. So you are having to use the question words in the role play, not just understand them. Okay, so we need to make sure that we know what they are. So these are, there's a list here of, it's actually 16 because we go from 9 to 11. Question words, key question words, some of them phrased as full questions, some of them just a question word. I suggest you pause the video, you go through and see how many you know, and then come back when you want to see the answers. Right, so ¿dónde? Where. ¿Cuándo? When. ¿Cuál? Which. ¿Cómo? How. ¿Qué? What. ¿Por qué? Why, which we all know. ¿Cuánto? Is how much or how many. We often see it in the context ¿cuánto cuesta? So that is the question, how much does it cost? ¿Quién or con quién? Who or with who? ¿Desde cuándo? Since when? ¿Qué opinas de? What do you think of? ¿A qué hora? At what time? ¿Cuánto tiempo dura? Whatever. How long does this thing last? You could just use cuánto tiempo as how long, but usually that goes together with the word durar, which is to last. ¿Con qué frecuencia? How often? ¿Cómo es? That's the thing you're talking about. What is this thing like? And that is a question that catches people out a lot because it's really a different structure to English. ¿A qué hora abre o cierra? What time does X open or close? ¿A qué hora empieza, termina? At what time does X start or end? And 16 and 17, they like to bring those up quite a lot in role plays. Right, so on the next screen, we're going to do the opposite of this. So you've got the English and you have to translate into Spanish. So I suggest maybe you take a little pause here, you go through the words, and then you come back when you're ready to move on to that part. Okay, so this time, as I just said, we're doing it the other way around. And this is because in the role play, we have to ask questions. Therefore, these are words we need to be able to say and use, not just understand. So, where? ¿Dónde? When? ¿Cuándo? Which? ¿Cuál? How? ¿Cómo? What? ¿Qué? Why? ¿Por qué? How much, how many is ¿cuánto? How much does it cost? ¿Cuánto cuesta? Who or with who? ¿Con quién? Since when? ¿Desde cuándo? And there should be an accent on that sorry. What do you think of? ¿Qué opinas de? At what time? ¿A qué hora? How long does something last? ¿Cuánto tiempo dura? How often? ¿Con qué frecuencia? What is this thing like? ¿Cómo es? At what time does X open or close? ¿A qué hora abre or cierra? And at what time does X start or end? ¿A qué hora empieza? Termina. Okay, so I'll also link the Quizlet for these at the bottom. So if you need more practice, please do use that. Otherwise, we're now moving on to thinking about our prep time. So this is an example of the card that you would be given. And my top tips for this. 1, you do not write on the cards. You'll be given a separate piece of paper that you write all your notes on. So make sure you, 1, label it role play so that when you're in the middle of the exam, and you're a little bit panicked, you can just look at the sheet where you've written everything down and you know exactly where to go to and number your answers. Why should you number your answers? Because you do not need to understand what your teacher says to you in this part of the exam. All you need to know is they've spoken question 1. Now I read the answer. I wrote question 1. So if you've numbered as number 1, it's really easy. And that follows the whole way through. Make sure that your questions are linked to what you are told to say. Sometimes people just kind of think, oh yeah, I'm asking a question, I'm just going to ask about anything at all. The card tells you exactly what you need to ask about. If you don't ask about that, you don't get the marks. Keep all your answers short and to the point. A short sentence that mostly should be including a verb should get you the 2 points easily. And in the exam, make sure you have your card. So when I say in the speaking part of the exam, make sure that when you get to the role play, and your teacher will speak in English throughout the exam and say, I'm now moving on to the role play, make sure you have that card in front of you just so that you can follow along. If at any point you're unsure what your teacher has said, you can see very clearly what the prompt was for English. And remember, this is a total of 10 marks, 2 marks per answer. Your aim is to communicate as efficiently as possible. We do not need a lot of information for this. Right, so a worked example then. So this is one from at the hotel. So you're in a hotel, you want to book a room, your teacher plays part of the receptionist and will speak first. And these are 5 tasks. So I've given you the English translation of what I would say, or what you could say in this scenario to get full marks, okay? So if we were really, really stuck, for 1, 2, and 3, I have written the word in bold that if you could communicate that information, you'd get at least 1 of the 2 marks. And sometimes that is what you're aiming for. 1 of the 2 marks is better than none. So where you are really stuck, you opt for the most successful option. And in this case, it would just be communicating that information. So I suggest you pause the video now, read the tasks. So number 1, say what type of room you want, and then translate I want or I would like a double room into Spanish, and then come back when you've done your translation and you want the answers. Okay, so I want or would like a double room. Me gustaría or quiero una habitación doble. Now, what I would say here is you might not know the word for double room. You might be really stuck. So think about how you would get around it. You could say for 2 people. You could say 2 beds. Okay, there are ways to get around it. Even if you only end up getting 1 mark, that's better than thinking, I don't know the word for room, therefore I'm not going to say anything. From the 2nd of August to the 9th of August, del 2 de agosto al 9 de agosto. Obviously, your dates could be anything. And the reason it's del is because from would be de, but then we have to say de el 2 de agosto. So we combine de and el, and we get del. Similarly, 2 would be a, but we have to say a el 9 de agosto. So a plus el is al. I'm going to eat breakfast in the hotel. There are lots of ways around this. This was just, I thought, the most straightforward way to answer this. So voy a desayunar, or voy a tomar el desayuno en el hotel. Voy a comer el desayuno. Sounds a bit funny in Spanish, but it gets the point across, so you'd still be okay with that. But desayunar en el hotel, or quiero desayunar en el hotel. Any verbs like that would work. Is there a gym? So I'm asking about the sports facilities in the hotel. The easiest way is just to say, is there a gym? And to do this, all I have to do is turn the statement into a question with the tone of my voice. So, hay un gimnasio. If I say, hay un gimnasio, I'm saying there is a gym. If I say, hay un gimnasio, I'm asking, is there a gym? Okay, so with questions like that, where there isn't actually a question word in the question, we just use our tone of voice. And similarly then, for number 5, are there museums in the town? Hay museos en el pueblo? And that is our work example. Obviously, you could have done other things, and feel free to ask in the comments if you've written something separate and you want me to check it, that is absolutely fine. Otherwise, now moving on to some examples for you to do on your own. So I have 2 examples here. So what I suggest is, this is the first one. I suggest you pause now, you write your own answers. Remember, short, to the point, try and use a verb, but keep it really short for your 2 marks. So pause the video, write your answers, and come back and I'll give you some examples, which obviously you might have written something different that would still work. Okay, so my suggested answers for this, which obviously yours can be different. Number 1, quiero jugar al fútbol. I've got year 9, so you could definitely write that sentence. So we're not overcomplicating it here, we're just communicating the key information. 2, ¿puedo comprar una botella de agua? You could say I agua if you're really stuck, but I'm trying to make it about buying. So can I buy a bottle of water? I don't know why that B is capitalized. Obviously, you could have written something else. Why you like to do exercise? Me gusta porque es relajante. Okay? I don't even necessarily need the me gusta. Porque es relajante would be enough. Okay. Say what activity you plan to do tomorrow. Mañana voy a jugar al tenis. Again, I'm keeping this super simple. It's basically the same as number 1. And 5, ask the employee about opening time. So we saw this question earlier. So I've gone for a qué hora abre el centro, because I'm at the sports center. Okay, so that's, for me, was the easiest way. You could have said el polideportivo or a different word for sports center. Okay, so those are my examples for that question. And we have one final question over here, which is at the shopping center. So again, pause the video, write your answers, and then come back to check against my suggestions, which are only 3. Okay, so say what kind of gift you want. Quiero comprar una bufanda. So note that also I'm not having to use the word gift here. And just because there's a word in the prompt shouldn't make you think you have to know that word in order to answer it. So very simply, I want to buy a scarf, una bufanda. You could have written anything there. What occasion the gift is for, and I'd be careful here because people make mistakes with this so much. It should be, es para el cumpleaños de mi hermana, or de mi amiga, de mi hermano, de mi madre, de mi padre. But that is your word order, the birthday of my sister. No es para mi hermana's cumpleaños. The apostrophe S is something specific to English, does not exist in Spanish. 3, vamos a celebrar mañana. Vamos because we, but you could say voy a celebrar mañana. If you're really stuck, mañana would be fine, or another time phrase. Ask a question about something else you want to buy. ¿Tienes una falda azul? So really, you could go for anything there. Tienes is an important word. Here, it means do you have? And then you can put anything after it. And ask a question about places to eat and drink. I have gone for ¿qué restaurante recomiendas? What restaurant do you recommend? Again, you could have done other things. And if you want to check if what you have written would also work, just comment it in the comments below. Otherwise, this is maybe the best part of this whole video. Revision tips for the role play are minimal. I've only got 2 here. 1, know your question words. And I know that will only help you on higher with 2 questions, but that's 4 marks. And secondly, practice some examples. The role play is kind of so sporadic that I recommend that, again, you can look for examples on exam board websites, you can ask your teacher, you can ask me, but as long as you've done some practice, you feel confident with the format, you think, okay, well, I know that I'll be able to come up with some sort of vocabulary to make it work, and you remember the rules about keeping it simple, you will be fine. So well done if you've made it to the end of week 3. We are a third of the way through bootcamp, which means speaking is about 6 weeks away now. So it's getting closer. The hard work that you are doing will pay off in April. So keep going. Y nos vemos la próxima semana.